Mimi stood quietly as her uncle handed her over to strangers. She didn't know who they were or where they were taking her. All she knew was what her uncle said coldly: "You'll be better off as someone else's problem." He didn't hug her, didn't look back, just turned and walked away like she meant nothing. Mimi held tightly onto a small plastic bag. Inside were only a pair of worn-out slippers, an old dress, and a folded letter from her late mother, the last piece of love she had. The car door shut, and they drove off without a word. Mimi didn't cry. She had cried too many times already. But inside, something in her broke. Her heart felt heavy, but she stayed quiet, staring out the window as trees and houses passed by. No one looked back for her. No one asked if she was okay. She sat in the back seat, wondering why life had treated her like this. She didn't understand what she had done wrong. She was just a girl, hoping to be loved. And now, she was being given away like she didn't matter at all. In the house where Mimi was taken, no one called her by her name. To them, she was just Housemaid, that girl, or sometimes just a number. They didn't see her as a human being. She was the one who cleaned, cooked, washed and served without rest. Every day, she woke up before the sun, even when the stars were still in the sky. Her feet touched the cold floor before anyone else was awake. By the time everyone went to sleep, she was still working, still scrubbing, still wiping away the dirt others left behind. Her hands were always sore, her back always aching, but she wasn't allowed to complain. If a guest dropped something, she picked it up fast. If she was slow, she got shouted at, or worse, slapped. One day, while polishing a man's leather shoes, her stomach growled loudly. She hadn't eaten anything since the day before. Her legs gave up, and she fainted right there on the cold floor. No one ran to help her. They just told her to get up and keep working. She lived like a shadow, there, but never really seen. Every small mistake brought insults. If the food wasn't hot enough, she got punished. If the shirt wasn't ironed straight, she got shouted at. No one asked her if she was okay. No one cared if she was sick or tired. They just cared that she did her job and stayed quiet. She was just a tool in that big house full of lights and noise. But for her, it was always dark and silent. Yet even in that pain, Mimi held on to something deep inside. At night, when everyone else was asleep and her eyes were heavy with tears, she whispered to herself, "I won't die here. Mama didn't raise me to break." It was that quiet voice inside her that kept her going. Even when her body felt weak, her heart refused to give up. She believed that one day, somehow, this nightmare would end. That one day, someone would call her by her real name again. Not as a maid, not as a number, but as Mimi. One afternoon, while cleaning the dusty corner of the storeroom, Mimi was told to move an old wooden cupboard. It was heavy, but she pushed it little by little. As she bent down to sweep under it, something soft and folded slipped out of her small bag that she had hidden behind the cupboard for safety. It was her mother's letter, the same letter she had carried with her from the village. Somehow, in all the days of working like a machine, she had forgotten it was there. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The paper was old and slightly torn at the edges, but her mother's handwriting was still clear. Mimi sat down quietly on the floor, away from any noise, and began to read it again, word by word. Her mother had written with love and hope, telling her, "You are not for sale, my daughter. You are gold hidden in dust." Those words hit her differently this time. In that dark moment, it felt like her mother had reached out from heaven just to hold her. Tears rolled down Mimi's cheeks, but not because of sadness. This time, the tears came from something waking up inside her. For the first time in a long while, she remembered who she really was. Not a servant, not a nobody, but someone her mother believed in, someone full of worth, even if no one else could see it. She folded the letter slowly and held it close to her chest. That night, as she lay on the thin mat in the corner of the kitchen, she didn't cry herself to sleep like she used to. Instead, she closed her eyes and made a silent promise to herself she would find a way out of this life, but not with hate or revenge. That wasn't what her mother would want. She would rise through purpose, by becoming someone her mother would be proud of. From that night, something changed in Mimi. She still worked, still cleaned, still served the house as before, but now there was light in her eyes, a quiet fire. Every insult didn't break her anymore. Every slap didn't steal her strength. She knew in her heart, This place was not her ending. It was just a chapter, and she was going to write the rest of her story with courage, not pain. No one noticed the change in her right away, but Mimi knew. She had found her voice. Not the kind you use to shout, but the one that speaks inside you and says, "I am more than this." Before the first rooster crowed, Mimi quietly tiptoed out of the big house. Her heart was beating fast, but her steps were steady. She had no money, no shoes, and no idea where she was going. All she knew was that she had to leave. If she stayed any longer, she would lose herself completely. The streets were still dark, the air cold against her skin. Her feet hurt from walking on rough stones, but she didn't stop. She walked for hours, holding only the letter from her mother, the one thing giving her strength. She passed people who didn't notice her. She sat near a bus station, hoping someone would ask if she needed help, but no one did. Hungry, tired, and scared, she found a corner near a shop and curled up, hugging her knees to her chest. The city was big, loud, and full of people, but it didn't feel kind. It didn't open its arms to her. It ignored her, just like everyone else had. Days passed like that. Mimi slept on cold floors, sometimes near bus stops, sometimes near market stalls. She begged for small pieces of bread and sipped water from public taps. Her body grew weaker, but her heart stayed strong. She kept repeating her mother's words in her head. "You are gold hidden in dust." Then one morning, while sitting beside a gutter, shaking from hunger and cold, an old woman walked by. She looked at Mimi with soft eyes and stopped. Her voice was rough but warm as she said, "You are somebody's child. Come eat." Mimi looked up, surprised. No one had spoken to her with kindness in so long. The woman didn't ask questions. She simply held Mimi's hand and took her to a small food stall nearby. There, the woman gave her a plate of hot food. Mimi ate slowly, tears falling down her cheeks. Not just because of hunger, but because someone finally saw her. Someone finally treated her like a human being. After she finished, the woman asked her name. When Mimi whispered it, the woman smiled and said, "Mimi, you are safe now." For the first time in months, someone had called her by her real name. Not maid, not girl, not hey you, but Mimi. That one word made her feel alive again. The city hadn't saved her, but this one stranger, this one moment of kindness, felt like the beginning of a new life. Ma Didi's food stall was small, just a wooden table under a tree with a few benches around it. But for Mimi, it felt like a palace. It was safe, it was warm, and Ma Didi was kind, like a mother she had never had. She didn't just give Mimi food, she gave her a place to stay, and something even more important, she gave her a chance. Every morning, they woke up early and prepared the stall together. Mimi washed plates, served food, and learned to handle customers. Ma Dede began teaching her how to count money, how to speak politely to people, how to make others feel welcome. She would say, "Smile when you serve. A good heart brings people back." Mimi listened carefully. She wanted to learn. She wanted to grow. Slowly, something inside Mimi started to bloom. She was no longer just surviving. She was learning, changing, becoming someone new. Madide saw it too. She told Mimi, "You have light in you. You just need to let it shine." Those words stayed in Mimi's heart. Customers started noticing her. They liked the way she served food with a calm smile. They liked how quick and respectful she was. Some even began asking, "Who's the bright girl with the tray?" Mimi would blush, not knowing how to answer. Ma Dede would just smile and say, "That's Mimi, my star." Mimi no longer felt like the girl who was sold. She began to see herself as someone with value. Each day brought more confidence. She started helping Ma Dede with the money, writing down items, and suggesting small changes to make the stall better. Ma Dede listened to her ideas and praised her. It was the first time anyone had ever believed in her mind, not just her hands. Then, one afternoon, everything changed again. A quiet man walked into the stall. He wore a clean suit and sat in the corner, watching the way Mimi worked. He didn't talk much. He just observed. But Mimi noticed him. There was something calm, almost powerful, about the way he looked around. When she brought his plate, he looked her in the eyes and smiled gently. She didn't know who he was, but his presence felt different. That man was Zile, and though he said little, something about the way he watched her told a new story was about to begin. Mimi didn't know it yet, but her days of serving at the tray were planting a seed for something bigger. something her past could never have predicted. Zale came to the food stall a few more times after that first visit. He always sat quietly in the corner, never rushed, never loud. While others talked and laughed, he simply watched. But he wasn't staring in a strange way, he was observing. Every time he came, he noticed how Mimi worked, how she spoke gently to old customers, how she stayed calm even when the food ran out, or the sun was too hot. She never shouted, never complained. She just kept serving, always with respect and peace in her eyes. Mimi didn't know who he was, but she could feel that he wasn't an ordinary man. One day, after finishing his meal, Zele stood up and slowly walked over to the small counter where Mimi was wiping plates. He didn't say much. He just looked at her, placed a clean white card on the table, and said one word, "Come." Then he walked away. Mimi stared at the card for a long time. It had his name and the name of a big company she had only heard about on radio. Her hands shook a little as she picked it up. What did he mean? Why her? She was just a girl who once cleaned toilets for strangers. Fear filled her mind. What if it was a mistake? What if it was a trap? Later that night, as they closed the stall, Mimi showed the card to Ma Didi. The old woman smiled softly and said, "Sometimes, destiny doesn't shout. It just hands you a card." Mimi didn't fully understand what that meant, but she trusted Ma Didi's heart. If this was something dangerous, she knew Ma Didi would never let her go. The next morning, with nervous hands and a fast-beating heart, Mimi went to the address on the card. It was a tall glass building with guards and cameras. She had never seen anything like it. Part of her wanted to run away. She felt too small for such a place. But then she remembered her mother's letter. "You are gold hidden in dust." She took a deep breath and walked in. That one step into the building would change her life. She didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just about a job. Zile had seen something in her that many people missed. He didn't see a maid or a poor girl. He saw someone with strength, grace, and potential. And for Mimi, everything that came after began with that one simple word written on a card: "Come." When Mimi walked into Zile's company, she thought it was just for a cleaning job, or maybe to serve tea like she used to. She wore the best clothes Ma Didi could find for her, a clean dress and borrowed sandals. Her heart was nervous, but she walked in with quiet hope. The building was huge and shiny, filled with people in suits moving fast. Mimi felt out of place, but she kept walking until someone led her to an office. Zele was there, calm as always. He welcomed her, not with questions or judgment, but with a simple smile. Then he surprised her. He didn't ask her to clean. He gave her a form and said, "You'll start training tomorrow." Mimi blinked. "Training for what?" she asked softly. "To learn," he replied. "To grow, to become who you really are." At first, it felt like a dream. She was given books, a mentor, and even a small salary. She was taught how to use a computer, how to write emails, how to speak in meetings. It was hard. She made mistakes. Sometimes she cried alone at night, afraid she wasn't good enough. But every time she wanted to give up, she remembered her mother's letter, and she remembered how far she had come. Zal checked on her sometimes. Not too much, not too little. Just enough to let her know he was watching. Not to judge, but to support. He didn't treat her like someone he was helping out of pity. He treated her like someone with potential. He gave her tasks with trust. He asked for her ideas. Slowly, Mimi stopped doubting herself. She started raising her hand in training sessions. She started smiling with pride when she finished a project. One day, she gathered the courage to ask him, "Why are you helping me like this? Why me?" Zele looked at her for a moment, then said softly, "Because I was once sold too, and someone believed in me." Mimi froze. In that one moment, she understood everything. This was not just kindness. This was shared pain, shared strength. The man who looked so powerful had once been broken too, and because someone gave him a chance, he was now doing the same for her. Mimi's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were happy ones. She didn't know it yet, but each day she trained, each task she completed, was moving her closer to something greater. She wasn't just another worker in a big company. She was slowly becoming a leader, a voice, a light. And one day, without even realizing it, the same girl who once scrubbed floors walked confidently into a boardroom, not as a maid, but as someone who belonged at the table. It was a normal morning at the office. Mimi walked in early, as always, carrying her files and ready to start the day. She had grown confident, smart, and respected. People now greeted her with smiles and listened when she spoke. She was no longer the scared girl who used to hide behind others. She had worked hard, learned fast, and proved herself, but nothing could have prepared her for what Zele said that day. He walked into the office and didn't say his usual calm, "Good morning." Instead, he looked right at her and said, "Be my wife." The entire office went silent. People stopped typing. Some turned their heads in shock. Mimi stood still. Her heart felt like it had stopped for a second. "Me?" she asked, almost in a whisper, unsure if she had heard him right. Zele nodded and smiled gently. "Yes, you," he said. "I'm not marrying where you come from. I'm marrying who you are." Those words hit deep. He didn't care about her past, her pain, or her background. He saw her for the woman she had become, strong, kind, wise, and full of light. Mimi didn't know what to say. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from the feeling of being truly seen. She had always been the girl people pushed aside, the girl people called names, the one no one ever chose. And now, the man she respected most, the one who had changed her life, was asking to walk beside her forever. The wedding was not loud or fancy. It was small, peaceful, and full of love. There were no crowds or cameras, just the people who truly mattered. Mimi wore a simple dress, but she looked like royalty. Her smile was brighter than gold. Zele stood beside her, proud and calm, holding her hand like it was the only thing he ever wanted. And the wedding invitation? One was sent directly to Uncle Badu, the same uncle who once sold her off like she was nothing. When he opened it, he couldn't believe his eyes. The girl he gave away now had a new name, a new life, and a husband who treated her like treasure. But Mimi didn't send the invitation to show off. She sent it as a quiet reminder, a way to say, without shouting, "You thought I was a burden, but look at what I became." There was no anger in her heart, only peace. That day, Mimi didn't just become a wife. She became living proof that no one's beginning decides their ending. She had turned pain into power, and love had found her, not because of her beauty or her past, but because of her heart. The road back to her village felt different this time. Mimi wasn't walking barefoot or carrying a small bag. She was sitting in the back seat of a clean black car, the air cool inside, her hand gently resting in her husband Zele's. As the car rolled through the dusty roads, people stopped and stared. Children paused their games. Women carrying firewood looked up in surprise. No one recognized the girl they had once ignored. They only saw a classy woman, dressed in quiet elegance, sitting beside a man who clearly loved and respected her. The car stopped in front of her uncle's house, the same house she'd been taken from all those years ago, the same place where her tears had fallen silently, where she had been treated like a burden. Mimi stepped out of the car slowly, her face calm, her heart steady. Zele walked beside her, his presence quiet but strong. Uncle Badu came out, wiping his hands on a dirty cloth. Confused by the car and the well-dressed couple standing at his doorstep, he squinted, trying to see clearly, and then his mouth dropped open. "Mimi?" he said, his voice shaky, as if he had seen a ghost. His eyes were wide, full of shock and disbelief. Mimi looked at him, not with anger, not with revenge in her eyes, but with something stronger, peace. She didn't shout, she didn't cry. She just stood there, tall and gentle, and said softly, "You didn't sell a girl, you released a queen." Uncle Badu didn't know what to say. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked down at the ground, ashamed, remembering the day he handed her over like she was nothing. He expected her to be bitter, to throw harsh words at him, but Mimi had no need for that. She had already won, not just in life, but in spirit. Neighbors started to gather, whispering to each other. Some didn't believe it was really her. Others watched in silence, seeing something powerful in her calmness. Mimi didn't come back to show off. She came back to remind herself, and maybe them too, that pain doesn't get the last word. Growth does. She stood for a few minutes, took one final look at the house where her story began, and then gently turned to leave. As she walked back to the car, Zele opened the door for her, his eyes full of pride. Mimi smiled, not because she wanted to prove anything, but because she knew who she was now. She wasn't their servant anymore. She was her own woman, and she had returned, not to seek payback, but to show that even the dustiest roads can lead to gold. Mimi's life could have ended in pain, but she chose something different. After everything she had been through, the betrayal, the suffering, the silence, She didn't turn her heart toward revenge. She turned it toward healing. With the support of Zile, she used her new life not to show off, but to lift others who had walked the same hard road. She remembered how it felt to be nameless, to be treated like nothing, to cry alone with no one hearing her. She couldn't forget, so she decided to become the kind of person she had once needed. She built a small shelter, simple but safe. It was for girls like her, the ones who had been sold, mistreated, and forgotten, the ones who had names but were never called by them, the ones who were still full of light, even if they didn't know it yet. She didn't give big speeches or chase attention. Mimi just showed up. She sat with the girls, listened to their stories, helped them learn, and reminded them of their worth. When they cried, she held their hand. When they doubted themselves, she told them, "You are not what they did to you. You are what you decide to become." Those words were not just a lesson. They were her truth. Her whole life proved that pain doesn't have to break you. It can grow you. Every girl who entered that shelter felt her kindness. They didn't just see a woman who made it out. They saw a woman who reached back to pull others forward. Mimi became a quiet light in a dark world. She didn't chase revenge on those who hurt her. She chased hope for those still hurting. She used her scars as bridges, not weapons, and that made all the difference. People would often ask, how did she do it? But the real question was, why did she choose kindness? The answer was simple, because rising was more powerful than revenge. Because love, when given to the broken, can change everything. Mimi's story wasn't written to shame her past. It was written to guide others through theirs. She never needed the world to clap for her. She just needed one girl, one lost, hurting girl, to believe again. And every time she whispered, "You are gold," even in dust, she wasn't just saving them. She was saving the little girl she once was, too. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll without sharing. Tag a queen who rose from pain. Comment if you believe every girl deserves a second chance. And remember, you are not what they did to you. You are what you decide to become.